Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Elizabeth Omori. On Insight today, a critical issue that affects everyone will be discussed: mental health. It encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Psychologists say mental health conditions can increase the risk of developing physical health problems like heart disease due to factors like low motivation and difficulty with self-care. Promoting mental health is part of our discussion today. We'll also be looking at the administration of President Bola Tinubu serving as the 16th and current president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He assumed office on the 29th of May 2023. During his inauguration, the president said his administration will focus on economic reforms for long-term gains that will receive positive accolades. No doubt, many of his decisions are paying off with remarkable evidences. We'll also analyze 2 years in office with expectations for the future. So, once again, welcome to Insights.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of agreements in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Mental health, medical experts say, refers to a person's overall emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It influences how individuals think, feel, and behave, and how they cope with stress, relate with others, as well as make choices. Healthy mental health, psychologists insist, supports the development and maintenance of strong positive relationships. This also involves balancing activities, responsibilities, and efforts to achieve psychological resilience. How do we promote good mental health, reduce stigma, and help persons with mental health disorders get help to achieve their full potential? My guest, Chime Asonye, founder Nigerian Mental Health, who joins us via Zoom from the United States, will speak to us. Thank you so much, Chime, for joining us on Insights.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here today.
Thank you so much. Now, at what point can we say an individual is not mentally stable and needs help aside physical manifestations?
Well, thank you. It's good to be here today. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to have this conversation with you is today is May, and May is Mental Health Month. It's mental health awareness. So it's important to have conversations around people's broad mental health. And I don't like to think about mental health as something in terms of stability and things like that. I'd like to think about mental health as a spectrum. We all have, just like physical health is on a spectrum. Sometimes we have healthier days and non-healthier days. When you have mental health, everybody has social and emotional health. It's dictated by the way we think and act. But what's important to understand is that mental health becomes an issue when it stops the normal functioning of life. When individuals begin to withdraw from society, when individuals begin to withdraw from friends and family, when they can't live the normal constraints of how they've been going around day to day. So when it begins to challenge you, of how you engage in the workplace, how you engage with your friends and family, if you start to withdraw, then it really impacts who you are, how you think, and how you feel.
Okay, so what are the common health conditions? Mental health
For
conditions.
mental health, when we think about Nigeria, there's really around 3 or 4 core mental health issues that we face as a society. One is depression. A lot of people don't know that, according to the World Health Organization, we actually have the most cases of depressive symptoms in Nigeria. And that's for a number of factors, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's, things like climate instability. The second has to do with anxiety, is a second known major mental health condition that we face in the country. And the third and fourth are mood disorders. And unfortunately, there's other types of mental health conditions that we've been facing more readily that we've been seeing, like schizophrenia and bipolar. So in general, Nigeria has a challenge when it comes to mental health conditions. We need to support individuals flourishing in terms of their psychological well-being, which is why we need to do things like support the recently passed Mental Health Act, to really provide the infrastructure and support to get individuals the tools and resources that they need.
When we come across persons or people, anybody, the person snaps, gets angry easily. Now, that person could be passing through a lot. At what point do we say that person has bipolar or has a mental health condition? I need you to break it down.
Well, yeah, so I would say that everybody is different and everybody's
Okay.
mental health condition presents differently. So if people have bipolar disorder, some people just have very, aggressive personalities, or some individuals just have challenges when it comes to how they relate with others and things like that. So there's actually tests according to things like the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. The DSM-5 is lately what we use, and there's a list of conditions for things like bipolar, depression, and anxiety. If or individuals meet these certain conditions, then they could be said to have one of these mental health conditions. But what's important to know that everybody presents a little bit differently when it
Okay.
comes to these mental health conditions. So it's not something that we could stigmatize and say, just because a person is lashing out or things like that, that means that they have a mental health condition. What's important to understand is that if you see somebody who has a challenge and it's different than what you expect, or how they've been, ask on them, check on them to see what the issues are. And then it's important to get professional advice. I would recommend going to see a psychiatrist or psychologist and having them do a proper diagnosis to see, do they have the meet the criteria to have a mental health condition, or are they just having a bad day?
Okay. Aside just having a bad day, are there other factors that affect the mental health of an individual? For example, some women are going through a lot in their marriages. Some are having issues with parenting. Some are having issues with their finances. What other factors could be responsible?
Yes, so there's a lot of factors that impact individuals having mental health condition. I would say that it could be things like socioeconomic factors. People experience joblessness. People experience poverty. Those things impact people's mental health. Issues of loneliness, issues of not feeling like they are man. Not man you be if you don't have if you don't have a access to the resources that you need to support your mental health condition. So there's important socioeconomic conditions that you mentioned. You mentioned women. There's gendered issues that face people, whether it's postpartum depression, and there's even emerging research that even men face things like postpartum depression. There's issues of gender when it comes to the workplace, or social cultural conditions, and people being restrained also can impact people's mental health conditions. There's issues like climate change. There's emerging research about how there's things called climate anxiety and eco crisis, where because of conflict security, or there's emerging research about how heat actually impacts individuals' mental health conditions. So psychosocial social forces certainly affect people's mental health, but there's other dispositions as well. There's definitely certain other dispositions. For instance, there's more research now about how Africans are facing loneliness more than their European counterparts. For African, according to the World Health Organization, it's around 12.5%. And according to the European West, they're facing loneliness at rates of 5%. So people think that it's something that's just, a white man's, or it's something that's in the West. People face mental health conditions, but we have a growing suicide epidemic here in the African continent. The World Health Organization actually says that the African region faces the highest suicide rates in the world. So it's a problem that impacts us, that we don't, and we stigmatize it, unfortunately. Even though we see it, on people, we stigmatize it. There's a study from Epi Africa and the Africa Polling Institute in 2020, and it said that the number one thing that Nigerians believe when they think of a mental health condition is they think about somebody running around naked. I'll say that again, 70% believe that a mental health condition or disease is someone running around naked. So we have a portrayal of what mental health conditions are, which is not accurate, unfortunately. And so it prevents people from getting the help and getting the support that they really need. So there's a variety of factors. It could be biological, it could be genetic, it could be social, cultural. But the important thing is that individuals who are facing these mental health conditions go and admit that it's okay to not be okay, and then engage in the help-seeking behavior that gets them the support that they need in order to help their psychological well-being.
Okay, I think I like your statement. It's okay not to be okay. It's actually a phase, and then it will pass. Now, let's talk about depression amongst the youth. This is a growing concern needing attention. What's your take?
There is a youth challenge in terms of where people feel like they should be and where they actually are that is impacting their mental health conditions. But also we see things like social media. Technology is a big impact. It's a twofold impact. It is with things like social media, with people growing on phones, people have less friends than they had before because they're turning to things like AI, or they're scrolling through what they see on the screen about where they should be and they shouldn't. So unfortunately, social media is having an impact. We see the increasing loneliness that I described a little bit earlier. And young people really want the resources and tools. They're having more increased conversations about who they are, how they connect to their individuals. They're more emotional, I would say, and that emotion is allowing more conversation around social media, but it's also being impacted around in the workplace or in schools with the stress that people are facing or the lack of electricity. So there's a lot of anxiety that young people are facing, but the great thing is that new technology is a blessing and a curse. Yes, it might be separating individuals, but it's also bringing people together. There's new apps that are out there, about 3 or 4 technology companies that are providing services. So we need to help support our young folks, but we also need to adopt the technology that our young folks are putting out there to help support people's mental health and well-being.
Okay, this is more on a lighter note. Oftentimes we see children or teenagers on their phones. They're so attached to their phones. They're on social media for hours, scrolling, watching reels for a very long time. Could this be a mental issue? Because some are so used to their phones, even adults, so used to their phones.
So technology itself, I think, is neutral, right? We've had technological advances throughout time. Before, I'm sure back in our day, me and you, we were doing VHS. The kids aren't doing VHS anymore, but that was a new
Of course.
technology. Back in the day, we're using things like flip phones, or I don't know what they call it, snail phones, but now they're using smartphones. Back in our time, we didn't have AI, and there's a new generation of AI. The technology itself is neutral, but the thing is how individuals invest in these technologies and what they do in order to impact society. One of the issues is that most mental health conditions present when people are youth and adolescents. So before people are 13 or 14, you start seeing these mental health conditions present themselves. So if they are faced with that lack of emotional connection because they're invested in their phone, if they're faced with this, that's when we see these type of things present. So we actually have seen different rules and regulations across the world to help combat and challenge this. For instance, in where some of my family is based in Chicago, Illinois. The governor in Illinois is actually pushing for schools to not allow for phones during the classroom and class session because they don't think that it's mutually compatible. And you see a lot of kids pour into their phones as opposed to pouring to their books or focus on their friendships and things like that. So I would say that phones are a challenge, an issue, but I think that there's ways that we can work around it, just like ways we work with any technology there. It could be a blessing and a curse. Are we using it in order to feed our ourselves and our connections, or are we using it to distance ourselves, distract ourselves, and become more lonely? We need to start doing the reverse and actually using the technology and the connection that we have to facilitate support, community, and connection.
Okay, that's good to know. Before we talk about what you do in your organization, how do we maintain good mental health?
So I think that there's a number of ways. The first way is that I think that we need to destigmatize the idea that mental health is a challenge and everybody can get support. It just like your physical health, even if you're not sick, you're not broken down, you can still get exercise to help improve your overall health and well-being. Just if even if you don't feel like you have a mental health condition, you can still do things like therapy or counseling or intergroup community connections and meetings in order to support well-being, have conversations of what's going on with yourself. That maintenance is okay. I know a lot of people who engage in regular therapy for support. There's also a number of wellness practices that are individual to themselves. For instance, me, I like playing music, which is really, really important I like doing this type of advocacy in terms of supporting the mental health ecosystem infrastructure. It helps me feel like a protagonist in what I'm doing. But other people might like yoga or art. We have an organization with Nigerian Mental Health where they use origami, which is Japanese paper making, and they go to different psychological clinics to support people. Other people might think about things when there's decay, like when there was COVID or when they see challenges outside in society. Sometimes it's good to experience life and vitality. And that might mean
Okay.
things as simple as going for a walk or having plants inside your house or having candles or having animals so you see life and vitality. So there's a number of wellness approaches. Or if you're a person of faith, you can look at prayer therapy. A lot of people want to distinguish between faith and mental health conditions, but it's an important part of the conversation. Things like affirmations and prayer could be support your different mental health. So people need to find out thing that helps them support their own mental well-being. It's deeply personal for individuals, but if it's either a walk outside or calling a friend, these are different things that you can do to support your own mental health and well-being.
Okay. Now, as the founder of Nigeria Health, Mental Health rather, what is your organization doing to reduce the prevalence of cases, health cases we record from mental health disorders?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Nigerian mental health really focuses on four areas. One is policy. The second one is education and research. The third one is disability inclusion, and the fourth one is wellness programming. So, right now we're doing especially a lot of work in the policy advocacy category. We helped lead actors and support initiatives with others to get the Mental Health Act passed. That was done around 2 years ago. And we've supported other things around policy reform. We helped author two national strategies on mental health. One is Nigeria's first ever suicide prevention strategy, which is important. I talked about how Nigeria has one of the seventh largest suicide rates on the continent and the 15th largest in the world. And so we're now one of less than 10 countries in Africa that have a suicide prevention policy. We helped author a new mental health strategy for the country. And the mental health strategy for the country is after a decade of silence. Now we're help pushing a roadmap for the Mental Health Act and making sure that gets implemented. Another important thing we're doing is that now that we have a Mental Health Act, we can't help individuals get help seeking behavior because suicide in the country is currently criminalized. So attempted suicide is criminalized. So unfortunately, if somebody tries to take their life, instead of getting the help and support they need, it is, according to the Nigeria's criminal and penal code, they are sentenced to up to a year in jail. The World Health Organization says that stops help seeking behavior, which is antithetical to the Mental Health Act. So we are pushing, now that we got the Mental Health Act passed, we are pushing for the Mental Health Act to have a creation of a Department of Mental Health, which is one of the institutions. You can't make sure that all the things around training or human rights or funding happen if you don't have a standalone Department of Mental Health. So we're calling on the federal government to make sure that we execute the Mental Health Act and create a Department of Mental Health. More than 2 years, we haven't seen that happen. And it's one of the things that's in the law that needs to be enforced. But also, we're also calling on the federal government to make sure they decriminalize attempted suicide. We've been working with the Attorney General's office, the Federal Ministry of Health, and also the National Assembly to pass a suicide prevention bill. We need the National Assembly to act on it this year so people really, so we can become we're only one of less than 20 countries that still have suicide criminalized on the books. It's a colonial area law. And if we decriminalize attempted suicide, it will help enact the gains of the Mental Health Act and give people the support they need as opposed to landing them in jail.
Oh, that's good to know. Now, what should be the response mechanism for any nation prioritizing mental health? Now, let's begin from the family to society and the government. I need to have your thoughts on that.
Centers are hesitant to give out the information because of the stigma. They don't trust people actually who are well-meaning, who wants to get the help sometimes. So silence is part of the complicity and part of the betrayal that we have with these voices that are suffering. We call on these practitioner organizations to also help us take the directory and increase the listings that are all there. And then finally, you mentioned not just family and society, but also government and policymakers. It's a call to support the development of a nationally, regularly updated mental health database. This was done by our civil society organization, but we need government to help scale this organization to get individuals and rehabilitation centers to give us this information, and it also is a call that if these things are going to be necessary and be supported, we need to create a dedicated mental health department in the Ministry of Health. It can't be a situation where we have a Mental Health Act that has been passed over 2 years ago, and we still don't have a Department of Mental Health created. We're excited by the amazing reforms that the federal government and the minister is doing in the mental health space. Now it's time for people to execute those things that have been done so Nigeria can take its place as one of the countries that are really making major reforms in terms of the mental health. We're excited for what the Federal Ministry of Health has done so far, and we're excited to work with them in the future to make sure that they enact not only the Department of Mental Health, but also help us push our suicide prevention bill, which is currently in the National Assembly.
Okay. Now, my final question is this. I know you are in a different climate, but does therapy work when we talk about treatments? Does therapy really work?
Yes, I think mental health therapy does work for some people, but when we think about therapy, we also have to think about therapy is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's different forms of therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's group therapy, there's intermarital counseling, there's electroshock therapy, there's different forms of therapy. I myself, I've gone to different types of therapists. I've had therapists that have worked, therapists that haven't worked. I've had therapists I could identify with. I've had therapists that have done different types of approaches. And actually the other day, one of our organizations within Nigerian Mental Health, ASAD, the Anti-Suicide Depression Squad, they had a whole seminar about the different forms of therapy. And so if people are interested in this, they can, like I said, they can go to our website, they can get engaged in crisis counseling, they can go to our new directory and get the type of therapy that they need. But know that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. If you have a bad experience, try something else. It's kind of trial and error. Just the same way if you're doing something like exercising. Some exercises might be better for you, some exercises might be not. Don't give up initially. Therapy can work, but also therapy, if therapy doesn't work, you can try different wellness approaches. And that's why one of the things that's important is mental health funding. Right now, Nigerian federal government, we have a majority of the funds when it comes to mental health go to things like therapy and drugs and salaries. We don't have a lot that goes to wellness programming or psychosocial work like radio programming or community mental health centers and things like that. So we need to change our paradigm. We need to think about therapy as one resource, but we need to think about a variety of ways that people can respond beneficial to mental health treatment and understand it's not a one size fit all. Try different things, see what works for you, and most importantly, talk to a professional that can help guide you in your mental health journey.
Chime Asonye, founder Nigerian Mental Health. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Insights this week. Thank you so much for enlightening us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So glad to be here today.
Thank you.